Stop what you're doing and lean in. I'm going to tell you the single, quiet truth that changes everything you think you know about being alive. Did you know a single, tiny creature can choose to reverse its age back to a baby? Did you know your body is glowing right now, a soft light you can't see? There's a forest that's a single mind, and it's older than recorded history. We're diving into the hidden, subtle miracles happening all around us. And by the end of this, the world will feel completely new. But here's what no one tells you about these miracles. They're happening inside you right now. This isn't about far-off galaxies. This is about the most mysterious place in the cosmos, Earth. Tonight, we're taking a slow, peaceful journey into the quiet, patient secrets of life right here. You don't have to do anything but get comfortable and let your thoughts settle. The laws of nature you learned in school, they are only half the story. The other half is being written by tiny, silent masters that defy logic. I'll be honest, when I first learned about some of these creatures, I didn't believe they were real. I thought someone was playing an elaborate joke. But the joke was on me, because reality turned out to be stranger than anything I could imagine. The only real problem we have is that we're too busy to notice. We think we know how the world works, and that makes us bored. We assume life moves in a straight line. You're born, you grow, you die. We assume plants are passive. We assume rocks are dead. But what if our ordinary world is just a thin layer of skin over something far more complicated? Imagine the world as a massive theater where we're sitting in the front row watching a play, but the real performance is happening behind the curtain, in the wings, under the stage. We're so focused on the actors in front that we miss the magic happening everywhere else. What if the impossible is just something quiet we haven't paid attention to? And what if one creature has already figured out how to live forever?
Let's start in the ocean, specifically the clear, warm waters of the Mediterranean. Floating there is something that completely laughs at the rule that says you have to get old. It's the immortal jellyfish, Turritopsis dohrnii. When we say it's immortal, it doesn't mean it can't be eaten by a fish or crushed by a wave. But if it avoids being destroyed, this creature has a biological secret that sounds like something from a fantasy novel. When the jellyfish gets hurt, or when it gets old and stressed, it doesn't just die. It has a biological reset button. It actually begins to reverse its own life. Think of a grown-up turning cell by cell back into a baby. That's what it does. It absorbs its own delicate tentacles, changes the specialized cells in its body, and shrinks back into its original baby form called a polyp. It returns to childhood and starts its entire life cycle all over again. And here's the mind-bending part. It can do this over and over. Scientists have watched it happen repeatedly in labs. It's a quiet, bell-shaped drifter, smaller than your pinky nail. But it reminds us that our simple straight line from birth to death is not the only option. Picture rewinding a movie, but instead of just going backward, imagine each frame literally dissolving and reforming into the opening scene, with every pixel choosing to forget what it became and remember only what it was. That's what's happening inside this jellyfish's body, a cellular amnesia that leads to rebirth. The quiet cellular process is the real miracle. The jellyfish's body essentially unspecializes its cells. Cells that were tentacles revert to a stem cell-like state. It's a precise chemical re-engineering of its own flesh, happening in perfect coordination. When I first learned about this, I sat in silence for 10 minutes, just processing what it meant. We spend billions researching aging, developing creams and supplements, and this tiny creature, the size of a pencil eraser, has been doing it perfectly for millions of years. It made me realize how much we don't know. But if this jellyfish has found the secret to immortality, why hasn't evolution given this gift to more creatures? What's the catch that nature knows about eternal life that we don't? And why would a forest need to communicate at all? Unless trees are far more aware than we ever imagined.
Now, let's leave the ocean and walk into the quiet, cool stillness of a forest. If you stand by a big, old tree, you might think it's standing alone, but beneath your feet, something incredible and silent is happening. The entire forest is connected. I remember the first time I walked through a forest after learning this. I couldn't help but stop and press my palm against the bark of a massive oak, knowing that my touch was, in a way, being felt by every tree around me through their underground network. It completely changed how alone I felt standing there. Trees are not lone individuals. They are all linked up in a massive underground network made of fungal threads called mycorrhizae, the wood wide web. These threads, thinner than hair, spread out like a secret internet connecting the roots of almost every tree and plant. Through this invisible web, trees share resources. If one tree is getting tons of sunlight and making extra sugar, it can funnel that sugar through the network to a neighboring tree stuck in the shade. It's a quiet, organic food bank operating constantly. They also send out chemical warning signals. If one tree gets attacked by a pest, it releases a chemical alarm into the network. The other trees immediately start building up their defenses, making their leaves bitterer, tougher. Older trees, called mother trees, are the main hubs. They support their younger offspring by sending extra nutrients and water, like a parent quietly taking care of a child from a distance. Here's something that will change how you see a forest forever. When a mother tree is dying, it will dump its remaining nutrients into the network, essentially willing its biological wealth to its offspring. Scientists have documented trees increasing their nutrient sharing by up to 400% as they approach death. It's a wooden inheritance, a final gift written in sugar and minerals. The fungal threads are vastly more efficient at extracting water and minerals than the tree's own roots. When you stand in a forest, you are standing on top of a massive, living communication superhighway that has been running for thousands of years. But if trees can communicate and even recognize their own children, what does that mean about consciousness? Does a forest think? And wait until you hear what microscopic creatures can survive in the vacuum of space. Let's talk about a creature that laughs at every environmental challenge. They are the tiny, almost indestructible tardigrades, which everyone calls water bears. They're smaller than the head of a pin, and under a microscope, they look like wrinkled, eight-legged gummy bears. Don't let their appearance fool you. These microscopic animals are the absolute toughest forms of life on Earth. They can survive being boiled at temperatures over 300 degrees Fahrenheit. They can survive freezing solid at temperatures just above absolute zero. They can handle crushing pressure 6 times greater than the deepest ocean trench. And here is the big one. In 2007, scientists launched tardigrades into the vacuum of outer space, completely exposed to harsh radiation and vacuum, and they came back alive. Imagine if you could fold yourself up like origami, squeeze out every drop of water from your body, shut down every biological process until you were a pause button pressed on life itself. And then, when conditions improved, just add water and unfold back into yourself. That's a tardigrade. How do they pull this off? They enter a state called cryptobiosis, which means hidden life. When conditions become life-threatening, they completely dry themselves out, pulling their legs in and shrinking into a hard glass-like ball called a ton. They suspend their metabolism completely. They stop eating, breathing, and growing. They don't die, they just wait. They can wait like this for years, maybe even decades. The longest recorded survival was a tardigrade frozen for 30 years in Antarctic moss. When scientists thawed it out and added water, it slowly rehydrated, unfolded its little legs, and just started walking around again. The chemistry involves replacing water in their cells with a sugar called trehalose. This sugar forms a glassy matrix inside their body, keeping the cellular machinery from collapsing when the water is gone. Some tardigrades frozen for 30 years were successfully revived in 2016. They woke up, ate, and reproduced like it was just another Tuesday. Imagine going to sleep in 1986 and waking up now with no memory of the time between. But if these tiny creatures can survive space, could they have traveled between planets? Could life on Earth have started somewhere else? And speaking of space, did you know the air you're breathing almost killed all life billions of years ago?
We all take a deep breath without thinking. Oxygen is life. But what if I told you that billions of years ago, the very gas you breathe was actually a deadly poison? Go back about 2.5 billion years. Earth's atmosphere was very different. It was full of gases like methane and carbon dioxide, and it had almost no free oxygen. The early microbial life that lived then, called anaerobes, thrived in this oxygen-free world. Then, a tiny organism came along, the cyanobacteria. These little guys figured out photosynthesis on a massive scale. They started using sunlight and water to make energy, releasing oxygen as waste. At first, it wasn't a problem. The oceans absorbed it and it reacted with rocks. But over millions of years, oxygen kept building up. This triggered the Great Oxidation Event. For the countless original anaerobic species, this new gas was toxic. It destroyed their cells and corrupted their ancient metabolism. It was a mass poisoning, an extinction event caused by life itself. This fact keeps me up at night sometimes. The thing that gives me life was the equivalent of a nuclear apocalypse for the first living things. It makes you wonder what we're releasing into our world right now that future life might need to survive. But then, the lucky few adapted. Other organisms figured out how to use this invisible gas, not as poison, but as fuel. Oxygen is highly reactive, and life learned to harness that power to create much more energy than the old ways allowed. Eventually, that extra energy powered the rise of everything big and complex, including you and me. Think of Earth's atmosphere as a wine cellar that's slowly filled with a colorless, odorless gas. The original residents couldn't smell the change coming. By the time they noticed, the entire planet had transformed into an environment that burned them from the inside out. Only the ones who learned to love the poison survived. But if life can turn poison into fuel, what else can it do? What about plants? Surely they're passive. Well, some plants are actually silent hunters. We often picture plants as passive. They are green, gentle, and quietly wait for water. But not all plants are so polite. Some have a hidden appetite. Some plants go hunting. These are the carnivorous plants, the Venus flytrap, the pitcher plant, and the sundew. They don't have teeth or claws, but they have something much more ingenious: perfect design and quiet patience. The Venus flytrap has a precise counting mechanism. Inside its open jaws are delicate trigger hairs. If an insect touches just one hair, nothing happens. But if it touches two different hairs, or the same one twice, the trap snaps shut in a fraction of a second. Here's the part that blew my mind. The Venus flytrap can count to 5. After it closes, it keeps counting touches from the struggling insect inside. 1 or 2 touches, it stays loosely shut. 3 touches, it seals tighter and begins releasing digestive enzymes. 4 touches, more enzymes. 5 touches, full digestive mode activated. It's literally doing arithmetic to make sure it doesn't waste energy digesting a false alarm. The pitcher plant
forms a deep, hollow well filled with sweet nectar to attract insects. The rim is so slippery and the inner walls so lined with downward-pointing hairs that once an insect slides in, it falls into the pool of digestive enzymes and can't climb out. The sundew looks beautiful, glistening with tiny dewdrops. But those aren't water. They are sticky, glue-like tentacles. When a fly lands, the tentacles slowly curl in toward the center, wrapping around the prey. Why do they do this? Because they live in terrible soil, places where the ground has almost no nitrogen. So these plants have quietly adapted to get their nitrogen from insects instead of dirt. Imagine being so hungry that you had to redesign your entire body just to eat. These plants essentially turned themselves inside out, transforming their leaves into stomachs with teeth, all because the ground beneath them had nothing to offer. But if plants can hunt and count, what does that say about the intelligence inside your own body? Because you're not just one person, you're an entire world.
Now, for a fact that hits closer to home, you might feel like a single person, one body, one mind. But in reality, you are an entire living community, a massive, walking, breathing world within a world. Your body contains more microbial cells than human cells. Trillions of bacteria, viruses, fungi, and other tiny life forms live on your skin, in your mouth, and deep inside your gut. This vast collection is called your microbiome. And these little guys aren't just along for the ride. They are essential partners in everything you do. They help digest your food, train your immune system, produce essential vitamins. Scientists are even finding that your gut microbes can influence your mood and behavior, talking to your brain through chemical signals. When I learned this, I had an existential moment. Are my thoughts fully mine, or are they partially influenced by the trillions of bacteria in my gut? When I crave certain foods, is that me, or is that my microbiome asking for dinner? It's unsettling and beautiful at the same time. Just like no two fingerprints are the same, your microbiome is completely unique to you. You are never truly by yourself. You are walking, talking, thinking ecosystem, a miracle of cooperation where trillions of small lives work quietly every second to keep one big life going. Think of yourself as a massive city with trillions of microscopic citizens. Your skin is the suburbs. Your mouth is a busy commercial district, and your gut is downtown at rush hour, a dense, bustling metropolis where complex negotiations and chemical conversations happen every second. But if you're never alone and your thoughts might be influenced by bacteria, what about creatures that can literally edit their own genetic code in real time?
In the silent, cool depths of the ocean, the octopus is already one of the most intelligent creatures we know. It can open jars, solve puzzles, and change its color instantly. But the secret beneath its skin is even stranger. Octopuses can actually edit their own RNA. Think of it this way. DNA is the master blueprint. RNA is the temporary script that your body reads to translate DNA into proteins. While almost every other animal sticks strictly to the RNA script, octopuses can make real-time edits. Imagine being born with a detailed instruction manual for building yourself, but unlike everyone else who has to follow it exactly, you have a red pen and can make edits whenever you want. Too cold? Let me tweak this protein. Need different neurons? Done. That's what an octopus can do at the molecular level. This means they can fine-tune their biology in response to their environment almost instantly. They can alter how their neurons work, how their brain functions, how they sense their environment. It gives them remarkable flexibility. This ability bypasses the slower process of genetic mutation. Instead of waiting generations for useful changes to emerge, the octopus can reprogram its own cells in real time. There's a cost, though.
Scientists believe this RNA editing ability may be why octopuses haven't evolved much at the DNA level. They're so good at editing RNA that they don't need to change the original blueprint. But if an octopus can rewrite itself, what does that mean for our understanding of identity? And speaking of things that challenge our assumptions, did you know some animals experience grief? In the silent, cool depths of the ocean, the octopus is already one of the most intelligent creatures we know. It can open jars, solve puzzles, and change its color instantly. But the secret beneath its skin is even stranger. Octopuses can actually edit their own RNA. Think of it this way. DNA is the master blueprint. RNA is the temporary script that your body reads to translate DNA into proteins. While almost every other animal sticks strictly to the RNA script, octopuses can make real-time edits. Imagine being born with a detailed instruction manual for building yourself, but unlike everyone else who has to follow it exactly, you have a red pen and can make edits whenever you want. Too cold? Let me tweak this protein. Need different neurons? Done. That's what an octopus can do at the molecular level. This means they can fine-tune their biology in response to their environment almost instantly. They can alter how their neurons work, how their brain functions, how they sense their environment. It gives them remarkable flexibility. This ability bypasses the slower process of genetic mutation. Instead of waiting generations for useful changes to emerge, the octopus can reprogram its own cells in real time. There's a cost, though. Scientists believe this RNA editing ability may be why octopuses haven't evolved much at the DNA level. They're so good at editing RNA that they don't need to change the original blueprint. But if an octopus can rewrite itself, what does that mean for our understanding of identity? And speaking of things that challenge our assumptions, did you know some animals experience grief?
This is one of the strangest things you'll hear tonight. It looks like something from science fiction, acts like a creature with high intelligence, but it has no brain, no nerves, no nervous system at all. We are talking about the slime mold. Slime molds are single-celled organisms that live in damp environments. They have no consciousness, no thoughts, and yet they can solve mazes with perfect efficiency. In laboratory experiments, scientists place a slime mold in a maze with food at 2 different exits. The slime mold spreads out in all directions, exploring every path. But then it slowly pulls back, leaving behind the most efficient, most direct path between the 2 food sources. It figures out the puzzle without thinking or planning. Imagine you're trying to find your way through a maze, but instead of walking through it yourself, you flood the entire maze with water and then slowly drain it. The water that drains last traces out the shortest path. That's essentially what the slime mold does, but with living protoplasm. Slime molds use chemical gradients and feedback loops to explore their environment. They have even been used to model complex transportation networks. In one famous experiment, scientists placed oat flakes to represent major cities around Tokyo, and the slime mold recreated the Tokyo rail system, one of the most efficient transportation networks designed by human engineers. It's a strange, mesmerizing reminder that intelligence comes in many forms, and not all require a brain. But if a creature with no brain can solve mazes, what does that tell us about where intelligence comes from? And if intelligence can exist without neurons, what else might be intelligent that we've overlooked?
The Amazon rainforest is often called the lungs of the earth, but it's more than that. It's a vast, breathing, self-sustaining rain machine that creates its own weather. As sunlight warms the canopy, the billions of trees draw water from the soil and release moisture into the air through their leaves in a process called transpiration. This vapor rises, cools, and condenses into massive clouds, which then fall again as rain, feeding the forest below. It's a cycle so immense that the Amazon generates much of its own weather.
This self-sustaining loop helps regulate the climate of an entire continent. Think of the Amazon as a massive green lung that breathes in sunlight and exhales rain. But it's not just breathing. It's creating the very atmosphere it needs to survive, like an astronaut who generates oxygen through their own metabolism. The sheer scale of this transpiration, estimated to be more than 20 billion tons of water daily, is a constant miracle of biological air conditioning and weather control. When parts of this forest are lost, the cycle weakens. Less moisture goes into the air, fewer clouds form, and less rain falls. The balance is tipped, and droughts can spread. But if the Amazon creates its own rain, what about animals that create their own survival strategies for extreme conditions? Some creatures have found a way to survive being frozen solid. In the icy stillness of a North American winter, some frogs undergo one of the most astonishing transformations in the animal kingdom. They don't just hibernate, they literally freeze solid. The wood frog can survive being frozen for days, sometimes weeks. Its heart stops beating, its blood turns to ice, its organs completely shut down, and its whole body stiffens like a rock. But thanks to natural antifreeze compounds, mainly glucose, that flood its tissues, the frog's vital cells remain intact. The glucose draws water out of the cells and into the spaces between them, preventing the formation of lethal ice crystals inside the cell walls. When spring returns and temperatures rise, the ice slowly melts and the frog wakes up. Its heart restarts, its organs resume function, and it hops away as if nothing happened. Imagine going to sleep in winter and having your entire body freeze solid, your blood crystallizing, your heart stopping, and then, in spring, simply thawing out and going about your day. No recovery period, no trauma, just a frozen pause, and then a warm resume. The thawing process is a delicate, orchestrated restart of the entire circulatory system and nervous system, a constant cycle of death and rebirth. But freezing is one extreme. What about the other end? What happens in the deepest, darkest parts of the ocean where sunlight never reaches? Beneath the sunlit surface, far past the reach of light, lies a world that feels more like science fiction than Earth. The deep sea, cold, dark, and pressurized, is home to creatures unlike anything found on land. There are fish with glowing lures dangling from their heads, translucent predators with bodies like glass, glowing jellyfish, spindly crabs with legs like stilts, fish with enormous mouths that can swallow prey larger than themselves. Some creatures survive on chemicals emitted from hydrothermal vents. Others drift in endless twilight, bioluminescent and slow. Imagine an alien planet from a science fiction movie. Eternal darkness, crushing pressure, freezing cold, toxic chemicals. Now realize that planet exists right here on Earth, just a few miles below the surface of the ocean. Because there is no light, many deep-sea creatures have evolved strange features: enormous mouths, enormous eyes, or no eyes at all. Some have evolved complete invisibility. We have only explored a fraction of the deep ocean. Much of it remains untouched, mysterious, and brimming with life we haven't even named yet. In 2020, scientists discovered the longest animal ever recorded, a siphonophore stretching an estimated 150 feet long, longer than a blue whale. It was just floating in the darkness, and we had no idea such things existed. But while the deep sea is alien, at least it's on our planet. Some creatures have abilities that seem like they belong in comic books, like being able to see something we literally cannot see. When you look at a flower, you see color, maybe yellow, red, or blue. But to many insects, especially bees, that same flower looks completely different. That's because they can see ultraviolet light, a part of the light spectrum completely invisible to the human eye. To a bee, a plain-looking yellow petal might blaze with glowing patterns, landing guides, and radiant rings, all perfectly designed to lead them straight to the nectar inside. Imagine if you found out that every book you'd ever read actually had secret messages written in invisible ink, entire chapters between the chapters you could read. That's what it's like for a bee looking at flowers compared to us. So while we share the same planet, we don't share the same visual world. There's a hidden spectrum all around us, constantly filled with signals and colors we will never quite see. For a bee, the flower is literally advertising its reward in a spectrum only its delivery driver can see. Some birds can also see UV light, and it affects how they choose mates. Birds that look plain to us might have dramatically different UV plumage patterns, as striking to other birds as the difference between black and white is to us. This fact humbles me every time. How much of reality am I missing because I don't have the right sensors? What if there are entire layers of the world that other creatures perceive, but I simply cannot? But speaking of things that seem impossible, did you know some animals have a biological pause button for pregnancy? Deep in the Australian outback, where droughts can last for months, kangaroos carry a remarkable secret: the ability to pause time inside their own bodies. When conditions are harsh, a mother kangaroo can delay the development of a fertilized egg. This phenomenon is called embryonic diapause. It lets her body wait for the absolute right moment to continue the pregnancy. She might be nurturing one joey outside the pouch, have another in the pouch, and have a third embryo on pause inside her uterus, all at the same time. The suspended embryo's development stops completely, often for weeks or months. When food becomes available again, the embryo resumes its development, waking up from its quiet sleep. Imagine if human pregnancy worked this way. If you could pause it when things were difficult and then resume it when conditions improved. It's like having a remote control for one of the most fundamental biological processes. Some species of kangaroos can have embryos in diapause for up to 11 months, almost a full year of suspended development. But if kangaroos can pause time, what about creatures that can change their very identity, their biological sex? In the colorful chaos of coral reefs, some fish carry an astonishing secret. They can change their sex. They can go from male to female, or female to male, depending on what the social group needs. Take the clownfish. They live in strict social groups. The largest fish is always the female. If she dies, the dominant male doesn't go looking for a new female. He becomes the female. Within days or weeks, his body begins to change. His testes degenerate and ovaries develop. Imagine if, when a leader died, someone didn't just take their job, but actually transformed their entire body to become them. Changing sex, changing physiology, changing everything necessary to fill that role. This phenomenon, called sequential hermaphroditism, is biological, cellular, fundamental. Their hormones shift, their reproductive organs restructure, and their roles reverse. This challenges our understanding of sex as a fixed characteristic. For these fish, sex is more like a job role than an identity. Changeable, flexible, responsive to need. But if fish can change their sex, how do other animals navigate across thousands of miles to return to the exact same beach where they were born? Every year, billions of birds travel thousands of miles, returning to the same small nesting sites with incredible precision. How do they do it? One of their quiet secrets is the ability to sense the Earth's magnetic field. This sense, called magnetoreception, is like having an internal compass. Some birds have tiny crystals of magnetite in their beaks, but an even stranger mechanism may be at work in their eyes, where specialized proteins may allow them to literally see the magnetic field as patterns overlaid on their vision. Imagine if you could see Wi-Fi signals as colors in the air, if invisible electromagnetic fields became visible patterns you could navigate by. That might be close to what magnetoreception feels like for birds. This magnetic sense works alongside the sun, the stars, and the landscape to create a complete navigation system. Scientists have found that artificial magnetic fields can disorient migrating birds, causing them to fly in the wrong direction. Cell phone towers and power lines may be interfering with birds' magnetic sense. I once watched geese flying overhead, and I couldn't help but think they know exactly where they're going. They're feeling the planet's magnetic field, tracking the sun, reading the stars. Meanwhile, I get lost with GPS. It's humbling. But magnetism is just one invisible force. What about the most important invisible system of all? The cycle that connects every breath you take to everything else. The Earth is alive in more ways than we realize, and one of its deepest rhythms is the carbon cycle. Carbon moves through air, water, plants, animals, and rocks in a slow, massive flow. When you breathe out, you release carbon dioxide. Plants take that carbon in during photosynthesis. Animals eat those plants. Decomposers break down what's left. The ocean absorbs huge amounts of it. This global, endless exchange helps regulate the climate, supports all life, and shapes every ecosystem. Imagine the planet as a massive organism with lungs spanning continents. The forests inhale during the day, you exhale with every breath. The ocean absorbs constantly. The whole planet is breathing, not with one set of lungs, but with billions of interconnected systems passing carbon around. Every carbon atom in your body has been part of something else before you. Maybe it was part of a tree, part of a dinosaur, part of a fish. Carbon is recycled endlessly. You're made of borrowed atoms, and you'll return them when you're done. The carbon in your left hand might have been in a different organism than the carbon in your right hand. You're a temporary collection of ancient atoms. But the carbon cycle isn't the only ancient system still operating. Some structures being built today use techniques invented billions of years ago. Before plants, before fish, before animals, there were bacteria. And some of them built structures that still stand today. The first architecture on Earth. These structures are called stromatolites, ancient rock-like formations built by cyanobacteria. These bacteria form thick mats, trapping and binding sediments layer by layer, slowly building up dome-shaped rocks over time. Fossilized stromatolites date back over 3.5 billion years, making them among the oldest known evidence of life on Earth. Today, living stromatolites can still be found in places like Shark Bay, Australia. They are quiet, strange, and ancient, standing as monuments to the earliest engineers, builders without tools, architects without eyes. Imagine if the first human building was still standing, still being built using the original techniques. That's what stromatolites are, ancient architecture still under construction, a building project ongoing for 3 billion years. The oxygen you just breathed might have been released by a stromatolite building cyanobacterium 3 billion years ago, then cycled through countless organisms before reaching you. But while stromatolites are ancient, some organisms seem to defy our expectations in other ways, like having names for each other. In the shimmering blue of the ocean, Dolphins communicate with clicks and whistles. But there's something even more remarkable. They seem to have names for each other. Each dolphin develops a unique signature whistle early in life, an acoustic ID different from every other dolphin. Other dolphins learn and remember this whistle, using it to call out to specific individuals. Imagine if instead of saying, "Hello, Sarah," you made a specific musical tone that meant Sarah, a melody everyone agreed represented her. Every person would have their own theme song. That's essentially what dolphins are doing. When researchers played back a dolphin's own signature whistle underwater, that individual responded immediately, just like a person might turn when hearing their name. Dolphins can also produce the signature whistles of other dolphins, essentially calling out someone else's name. They do this when they want to get that dolphin's attention, or when they're talking about that dolphin to a third party. When I learned this, I thought about my own name, how it's just sounds, but it's become part of my identity. Dolphins have that same experience. They know their own whistle. They respond to it. They have a sense of self encoded in sound. But if dolphins have names, what else have we gotten wrong about the past? Some places we think of as permanent actually have wildly different histories.
Today, the Sahara Desert stretches vast, hot, and dry. But not so long ago, it was something else entirely. It was a lush, green paradise. Roughly 6,000 to 11,000 years ago, much of the Sahara was green. Rain fell regularly, rivers flowed, lakes shimmered, wildlife roamed, elephants, giraffes, crocodiles, hippos, and humans lived there, leaving behind cave paintings of this abundant, vanished life. This period, known as the African Humid Period, was driven by subtle shifts in the Earth's orbit. Eventually, the orbit shifted again, the rains faded, and the desert returned. Imagine watching a time-lapse of your neighborhood where thousands of years pass in minutes. You'd see forests grow and die, rivers change course, lakes appear and vanish. That's what the Sahara has been doing for millions of years, oscillating between green and brown, following the slow rhythm of Earth's orbital dance. But deep beneath the sands lie ancient lake beds, fossilized trees, and buried evidence of a world completely transformed. The Sahara is not just a desert, it's a quiet reminder that even the harshest landscapes were once soft, green, and alive. The Sahara will likely turn green again, maybe in 10,000 years, when Earth's orbit shifts once more. What seems permanent to us is just a moment in geological time. But speaking of intelligence in unexpected places, did you know insects can understand abstract mathematical concepts that took humans thousands of years to figure out?
They are tiny, they buzz, and they pollinate our world. But bees are also capable of something astonishing. They seem to understand the concept of zero. In carefully designed experiments, bees were trained to associate a smaller number of shapes with a sweet reward. When presented with cards showing different numbers of shapes, the bees learned to fly toward the card with fewer shapes. Then came the test. Researchers presented the bees with a blank card, 0 shapes, alongside cards with 1, 2, or 3 shapes. The bees correctly chose the blank card, treating 0 as less than 1. They understood that none is less than some. Imagine trying to explain that nothing is actually something, that 0 is a number just like 1 or 2. It's abstract, philosophical even. Ancient civilizations struggled with this.
The concept of zero wasn't fully developed in human mathematics until around 500 CE. And yet bees, with brains containing fewer than 1 million neurons, can grasp it. Only a few animals, chimpanzees, dolphins, parrots, and now bees have demonstrated this kind of numerical reasoning. The fact that bees can do the same is remarkable. This suggests that the hardware required for complex thought might be much simpler than we assumed. You don't need a huge brain, you just need the right kind of brain. This discovery made me fundamentally rethink what intelligence means. It's not about size or similarity to human brains. A bee might understand things I struggle with just using completely different architecture. But bees aren't the only creatures that have changed how we think about ecosystems. Sometimes the most important members are the ones people want to remove, like predators.
When wolves were reintroduced to Yellowstone National Park in the 1990s after being absent for nearly 70 years, something incredible happened. Scientists expected them to affect deer populations, but no one predicted that the wolves would literally change the physical geography of the park, that they would reshape rivers themselves. Here's how it happened. With the return of the wolves, the elk population was controlled, and elk started avoiding certain areas, particularly riverbanks where they were vulnerable. With fewer elk constantly grazing, the vegetation along the riverbanks recovered. Trees and shrubs grew taller and healthier for the first time in decades. With mature trees stabilizing the riverbanks with their roots, erosion decreased. The banks stopped collapsing into the water. The rivers became narrower, deeper, and more meandering. Beavers returned. They had been gone because there were no trees. With beavers came wetlands, ponds, and complex aquatic habitats. The healthier plant life attracted birds, small mammals, and insects. Think of an ecosystem as a massive machine made of living parts, thousands of gears and levers all interconnected. Remove one piece, and the whole machine wobbles. Put that piece back in, and everything clicks into place, humming smoothly again. This phenomena, known as a trophic cascade, shows how a single keystone species can have a profound impact on an entire ecosystem. The physical changes to the rivers were visible from space. Satellite imagery shows measurable differences in river width, vegetation coverage, and landscape structure. A few dozen wolves reshaped hundreds of square miles. This story gives me hope. It shows that ecosystems can heal, that damage can be reversed, that bringing back one missing piece can trigger a cascade of recovery. But wolves reshaping rivers is one thing. What about plants that can hear, that can listen to the world and respond?
We often think of flowers as passive, beautiful, but fundamentally unaware. But some flowers are quietly listening to the world around them. Research has shown that certain plants can actually respond to the sound of a bee's buzz. When a pollinator approaches, the flower can detect it, and it responds by producing sweeter nectar within just minutes. The flower doesn't have ears, but its petals are finely tuned to vibrate in response to specific sound frequencies, specifically the frequency of a bee's buzz. The petals act like sensory organs, detecting the sound waves. Imagine if your kitchen could hear when you were approaching and automatically started preparing food. That's essentially what these flowers are doing, acoustic customer service. This helps ensure that the plant offers a better reward exactly when a pollinator is nearby, maximizing the chance of successful pollen transfer. It's a quiet, beautiful dialogue. The bee calls out just by flying, and the flower answers by sweetening its nectar. The flowers can distinguish between bee sounds and other sounds. Wind doesn't trigger the response. The flower is specifically tuned to the sound of its pollinators, filtering out noise like a sophisticated audio processor. But if flowers can hear and trees can communicate, what about the strangest partnerships in nature, where two different organisms merge into one? On stones, tree bark, and cliff faces, you'll find patches of color clinging to surfaces. These are lichens, and they hold a quiet truth that redefines what we mean by an organism. They are not one life form, but two, or sometimes three, living as a single, unified being. A lichen is a partnership between a fungus and an alga. The fungus provides the structure, the protective outer layer. The alga makes food from sunlight through photosynthesis. Together, they survive in places too harsh for either one alone, from Arctic tundra to dry deserts to bare rock faces. It's a classic example of symbiosis: two species, one life. Imagine if you and a completely different species, say a plant, merged into a single being, where you provided shelter and structure and they provided food through photosynthesis. That's a lichen, a living chimera, a fusion of kingdoms. Unexpected fact: some lichens are among the oldest living things on Earth. There are lichen colonies in the Arctic estimated to be over 9,000 years old, growing so slowly that they've been in the same spot since the end of the last ice age. Lichens make me rethink the whole concept of individuality. We think of ourselves as individuals, but we're collaborations with our microbiome, with the mitochondria in our cells, with the food we eat. Maybe individual is the wrong word. But partnerships aren't the only way organisms defy expectations. Some creatures seem to have solved aging by simply choosing not to age at all.
They are strange, wrinkled, nearly hairless, and live underground. But naked mole rats are one of the most biologically fascinating mammals alive, creatures that seem to have quietly opted out of aging. Most mammals have a rising risk of death as they get older, but naked mole rats don't show that typical increase in mortality risk. Their chance of death at age 5 is about the same as at age 25. They break the rule. They also appear highly resistant to cancer despite living up to 30 years, incredibly long for a mouse-sized rodent. Their cells remain stable. Their proteins resist damage. A 5-year-old naked mole rat looks and functions very much like a 25-year-old one. Imagine if humans aged until about 25 and then just stopped. Your 25-year-old body stayed 25 for the next 70 years, with no wrinkles, no increased disease risk, no decline. That's essentially what naked mole rats do. Scientists study them intensely for clues about longevity, cancer resistance, and resilience under stress. They are a quiet exception to the rules of mammalian life. Naked mole rats live in eusocial colonies like bees, the only mammal to do so. Only one female reproduces, and all others are workers. The queen can live up to 30 years and remain fertile almost her entire life. But while naked mole rats resist aging, they still must contend with daily struggles. Every organism exists within a body made of the same fundamental components: cells.
You are made of around 30 to 37 trillion cells. Every breath you take, every thought you have, every heartbeat is the work of countless microscopic parts working in perfect coordination. Muscle cells contract, neurons fire, sending electrical signals at incredible speed. Red blood cells deliver oxygen, skin cells renew, gut cells digest, immune cells defend. Together, these diverse cells form a single, unified body, one being made of many. But your body is also full of constant movement and change. Cells are constantly dying and being replaced. You are rebuilding yourself piece by piece every single day. You are not static. You are a living, flowing symphony of cellular cooperation. Think of your body as a massive city of 30 trillion citizens, each with a specific job. Some are construction workers, some are delivery drivers, some are security guards, some are electricians. None of them know the big picture, they just do their job. And yet, together, they create you. Even now, millions of cells are working silently to keep you whole. Your heart cells are contracting rhythmically. Your brain cells are firing in patterns that create the thought you're having right now. Your immune cells are destroying potentially cancerous cells.
all without you issuing a single conscious command. Sometimes I lie awake at night thinking about this, that I am not really one thing. I'm an ecosystem, a process, a pattern. The cells in my body are constantly dying and being replaced. In a very real sense, I'm not the same physical being I was 7 years ago. And yet I feel like the same person. Some of your cells are older than others. Neurons in your cerebral cortex are as old as you are, but your taste buds are replaced every 10 days. You're a patchwork of different ages. But while human cells are remarkable, some animals have cognitive abilities that rival young human children. They are colorful, talkative, and playful. But parrots are also among the most intelligent animals on the planet. Studies have shown that some species, like the African gray parrot, can count, understand abstract concepts, and even grasp the idea of zero. One famous African gray parrot, named Alex, learned to identify over 50 objects, 7 colors, 5 shapes, and quantities up to 6. He could ask for what he wanted. Want grape. Wanna go back. He answered complex questions correctly about 80% of the time. In many cognitive tasks, he performed on par with or better than a human toddler. Imagine if computers and human brains both reached the same level of capability, but using completely different hardware. That's what happened with parrots and primates, two completely different brain designs arriving at similar levels of cognitive sophistication. Unexpected detail. Some parrots can learn to use symbols and buttons to communicate specific requests. They're not just mimicking sounds, they understand that symbols represent objects and concepts. But intelligence on land is one thing. What about the oceans? Because most of Earth's life isn't on land at all. We walk the land, we live beneath the sky, but most of Earth's life is hidden beneath the waves. The ocean covers more than 70% of the planet's surface and contains the vast majority of all living material, from the tiniest plankton to the largest blue whales, from shimmering jellyfish to forests of kelp. Marine life thrives in forms almost too numerous to count. Even a single drop of seawater can contain thousands of microscopic organisms. We have only explored a fraction of the deep ocean. Less than 5% has been directly observed. Much of it remains untouched and brimming with life we haven't even named yet. If you think of Earth as a house, we humans live in a small room on the second floor. But the ocean is the entire basement, the first floor, and most of the second floor. It's 99% of the living space, and we've barely peeked into most of those rooms. The sea is not empty, it's teeming. The greatest wilderness on Earth is blue, deep, and largely unknown. The total volume of the ocean is about 1.335 billion cubic kilometers. If you took all the land on Earth and pushed it into the ocean, you'd only fill about 3% of the ocean's volume. But while the ocean holds most of Earth's life, some of the oldest individual organisms live on land. In a quiet grove in Utah stands what may be the oldest known living organism on Earth. It doesn't look ancient, it's just a cluster of seemingly ordinary trees with trembling leaves, quaking aspens. But beneath the surface, they are all connected. This is Pando, a clonal colony. Every single trunk, about 47,000 of them, is genetically identical, part of a single, massive root system. Pando doesn't reproduce with seeds. Instead, it sends up new stems from its roots, generation after generation. Though individual trunks die and regrow, the organism as a whole endures. Scientists estimate that Pando may be over 80,000 years old. It has survived the end of the last ice age, the extinction of mammoths, the entire span of human civilization. Imagine if you were immortal, but every 100 years you had to grow a completely new body and let the old one die.
Your core self would persist underground, always sending up new versions. That's Pando, one organism, thousands of bodies, an ancient consciousness distributed across an entire forest. Pando is dying. The lack of natural wildfires, overgrazing by deer, and human development are preventing new shoots from growing. One of the oldest organisms on Earth might disappear in our lifetime if we don't intervene. There's something profoundly moving about Pando to me. It's been alive longer than human civilization, silently growing in the same spot. After surviving everything for 80,000 years, it might die because of us. That responsibility weighs heavily. But if Pando has survived for 80,000 years, some lineages have survived far longer, hundreds of millions of years.
Sharks are often seen as modern predators, but their lineage is far older than most people realize. Sharks have existed for over 400 million years. Trees only appeared around 350 to 370 million years ago. That means sharks were swimming in the Earth's oceans before a single leaf shaded the land. They have survived 5 mass extinctions, including the one that wiped out the dinosaurs. Their basic body plan has changed very little, a quiet testament to how perfectly adapted they are. Imagine if the first airplane ever built was so perfectly designed that we're still using the same design 400 million years later. That's sharks. They're the evolutionary equivalent of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Some sharks alive today might be older than you think. Greenland sharks can live over 400 years. There might be Greenland sharks swimming today that were born before the American Revolution. But sharks aren't the only ancient success story. Entire ecosystems have been operating according to the same principles for hundreds of millions of years. Let's zoom out and look at all rainforests. They are not just shaped by weather, they actively help create it, acting as immense atmospheric engines. Every day, trees draw water from the soil and release it through their leaves through evapotranspiration. This moisture rises, condenses into clouds, and falls as rain. When the forest is healthy, it supports its own climate in a self-reinforcing feedback loop. When trees are lost, the effect is profound. Less moisture means fewer clouds, means less rain, means more trees die. Rainforests are not passive landscapes. They're vast engines of the atmosphere, breathing out mist, cloud, and life. Think of a rainforest as a massive green heart pumping moisture into the atmosphere with every leaf. The moisture rises like blood through arteries, circulates, and falls as rain like blood returning through veins. The Amazon alone generates flying rivers, invisible rivers of water vapor carrying more water than the Amazon River itself. These aerial rivers transport moisture thousands of miles. But while rainforests operate on a continental scale, some creatures operate on a much smaller, stranger scale. The world doesn't belong to humans. The world belongs to insects. For every human on Earth, there are an estimated 200 million insects. They live in every ecosystem. Beetles alone make up nearly a quarter of all known animal species, over 400,000 described species. Insects pollinate our crops, they recycle nutrients, they feed countless other creatures. They are the foundation of most terrestrial food webs. They have been here for over 400 million years and have survived every mass extinction event. If Earth were a company, insects would be the essential workforce doing all the critical work that keeps everything running. Vertebrates would be the visible management, but the company would collapse without its workforce. Though small and often overlooked, they are mighty, shaping the world in quiet, fundamental ways. The total weight of all the ants on Earth is estimated to be roughly equal to the total weight of all humans. And that's just ants. Add in all other insects, and they vastly outweigh all vertebrates combined. But while insects dominate through numbers, some creatures dominate through spectacle, through displays of beauty so elaborate they seem designed by artists.
We've traveled from the immortal jellyfish, rewinding its own time, to tardigrades surviving space, to forests whispering through underground networks. We've seen wisdom in brainless slime molds, grief in an elephant's touch, and the silent persistence of life through every extinction for 4 billion years. We've watched plants count and listen, octopuses rewrite their genetic code, naked mole rats refuse to age. We've seen wolves reshape rivers, flowers respond to bees, the ocean breathe out half our air. I started this journey thinking I knew the world pretty well. I had taken biology classes, read books, watched documentaries, but the more I learned, the more I realized I was just scratching the surface. Every answer led to 10 new questions. And honestly, there were nights I couldn't sleep, lying awake thinking about these things, about how I'm made of stardust, but also of ancient viruses in my DNA, about how my thoughts might be influenced by bacteria, about how I'm never alone because I'm an ecosystem, about how a jellyfish, smaller than my fingernail, has solved death itself. That feeling of endlessly unfolding mystery, of pulling back one curtain only to find another behind it, is maybe the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced. It's humbling and exciting and terrifying all at once. What is the single quiet truth that connects all these things? It's this: life is the ultimate inventor. It breaks its own rules faster than we can write them down. It has mastered time, defied space, invented light, solved math, and built cities from the simple material of dead stars. We are not separate from these quiet wonders. We are the most complex, most recent chapter of them. The world isn't a passive background for human activity. It's a vast, interconnected, breathing organism. Think of the universe as a massive symphony orchestra that's been playing for 13.8 billion years. For most of human history, we thought we were the only ones playing instruments. But we're not the orchestra. We're just one violin in the back row. The whole time, there's been this incredible music playing all around us, trees communicating in chemical whispers, tardigrades waiting in suspension, jellyfish rewinding their clocks, elephants mourning with rituals that span years, octopuses editing their genetic code. We're not the music. We're just finally learning to hear it. And that realization, that you're not the center but a participant, is both humbling and liberating. The greatest mystery isn't what's out there in distant galaxies. The greatest quiet mystery is the one unfolding right here, right now, in the dirt beneath your feet, in the sea beyond the shore, and in your own heart beating in your chest. As the vastness settles in, let the sounds fade softly. We found that the simplest creatures often hold the biggest secrets. We discovered that strength lies in unity, in cooperation, in connection. We learned that the only constant is life's quiet, relentless will to keep going. The world is a constant, shimmering contradiction, a place where plants count and listen, where octopuses edit their own code, where frogs freeze solid and wake up, where fish choose their gender, where birds sleep while flying. You're glowing right now, even if you can't see it. You're carrying ancient stardust. You're carrying viral DNA from infections that happened to your ancestors millions of years ago. You're never alone because trillions of organisms call you home. And somewhere, right now, a jellyfish is choosing to be young again. A tree is sending sugar to its struggling child. A tardigrade is waiting, patient and indestructible. A slime mold is solving a maze with no brain. An elephant is touching the bones of a friend. A bee is understanding zero. A whale is singing across 1,000 miles. Pondo is sending up new shoots from 80,000-year-old roots. The quiet miracles don't stop. They never have. They're just waiting for us to notice. The world you thought you knew is just the surface. Beneath it lies a reality far stranger, far more interconnected, far more alive than you ever imagined. And you're part of it, not separate from it, but woven into it at every level. If this changed how you see the world, even just a little, if you're lying there now thinking about the forest network under your feet, or the light your body makes, or the ancient stars inside you, then subscribe to see where we explore next. Because if these mysteries exist, if a jellyfish can live forever, if a tree can remember, if a slime mold can think without a brain, imagine what else we haven't found yet. Imagine what other impossible things are hiding in plain sight. The quiet miracles are everywhere. We just have to learn to see them.